Hello classmates, and welcome to Learning Interaction number 3. And this time we're going to talk about evaluations. And we're actually going to start off with chapter 3, and which is actually called Principles of Program Evaluation. And evaluation is a systematic gathering of information that can be used to inform good decisions. Now, while I was reading this chapter, I kept getting the impression that people don't really like making evaluations or giving them off because no one really likes to take surveys or, like little assessments. But it's very beneficial because as family life educators, we always want to do the best for our participants and our families. And by giving evaluations, we're able to see how our participants are progressing, what areas they need help with, and like what areas of the program need improvement. And it's an efficient way to gather all of that information. Now, I understand why people don't really like evaluations, and in the book they call it a necessary evil, because a lot of the information, because people don't like taking assessments or evaluations to begin with, a lot of the information is not going to be accurate. And it was even saying in the chapter how I think it was only 46% of the information that they get is actually usable, which I think is a lot, but I'm sure 100% would be a lot better. In the chapter, there were a lot of subsections, and it talks about with programs you have to have a vision, and you have to create goals. Now, a vision is just like a very broad idea of what you want your program to be, kind of like strengthening families. That's a vision. And as we go down to goals and like the objectives, those get more specific. So once you've come up with a vision, it's good to have a vision statement. And vision statements are shared expressions of a program staff. And this is important because, of course, you want your staff to have the same principles and ideas as you and to be going in that same direction and have all hands on deck. Now, after you have come up with your vision, it's important to go and get some goals and objectives. And as I stated before, goals and objectives become more and more specific as you go, as you continue on. Next in the chapter, they talk about defining the kind of information needed. And this specifically is talking about the evaluation questions. Now, these are very important because you want to know exactly what information you want to find out from the participants. And it's important because if you're not asking the right questions, you won't get the right answers or the right result that you are looking for. And a common example of a question would be, in what ways do the participants actually function better as a result of our program? And they put in parentheses behavior. Another would be, how do you feel you have improved in a certain area? And then you can like put in that space a certain area. And I think this is super important and amazing because who better knows how well they're doing than the participant. Granted, there's like a little leeway there, but I think that's like the best way to find out how things are going, and asking for feedback and just making the program perfect as best as we can for the participants. And I think that is great. And even though evaluations are time consuming, the end result is worth it. So along with chapter 3, we also went to Appendix E in our chapter books, and we learned about the Code of Ethics. And it tells us that in 1993, Brock announced the need for a Code of Ethics for the family life educators. And he met up with the National Council of Family Relations, also known as NCFR, and they unanimously approved the ethical principles and guidelines for the family scientists. And that was approved in April 1998. And I think this is super important and so exciting because as family life educators, we're constantly being told that we have a lot of power. And I believe that because usually people seeking help have humbled themselves and they're in a very vulnerable state. And I think not everyone, of course, is out to use their power unwisely or in a bad way. But I feel like sometimes when you are in a position of power, it is very easy, especially because we know the adversary is real, to become prideful and to put your needs in front of the needs of the participants. So I think the code of ethics helps out a lot to keep us in check and making sure that we're putting our best efforts for the families and the individuals that we help. And it talks a lot about the different types of values that the Code of Ethics offers. And there are three. And there's relational ethics, there's principles approach, and the virtue ethics. And among these three values, they talk about how we should interact with the family members, make sure that we are always putting our best foot forward with them and respecting their diverse backgrounds, making sure that we include the parents in all the decision making, and that we understand that we have a lot of influence on these families and to do so respectfully. It also talks about how we need to interact with the children, making sure that their voices are heard and that we are aware of them. And it also talks about our relationship among coworkers and the importance of having respect and just looking out for one another. And I think that is also extremely important. And so I'm very grateful for the Code of Ethics. It not only protects the family life educators, but it also protects the families and individuals that we are helping. Another article we were asked to read is called Professional Ethics and Practice by Glenn Palm. And I really enjoyed reading this article, especially there's a section that's called Tips for New Professionals. And I really related to this section only because I feel like I am a new professional. I know I have a lot to learn, and so I was very appreciative of Glenn putting this information in here. And the first principle that he shares is know the difference between true ethical dilemma and an issue that could be resolved with good technical skills. And I think that is very important, just to know exactly what kind of a problem that we're dealing with. Another one that he shares is good action doesn't necessarily mean the involvement of law officials. An example that they used in the article was talking about families with foreign backgrounds, because in some countries it is okay to punish children with corporal punishment. And it was basically saying how you don't need to call the police on these individuals. You just need to teach them proper principles and new ways of, I guess, disciplining their children. And I think that's a great thing to remember, that if families have a background of corporal punishment, that you don't need to call the police on them, but just to teach them proper principles. But of course, if the abuse does continue and it gets worse, law enforcement should be called. The last principle that he shares is difficult ethical situations take time to process and problem solve, and basically to be patient and to always be actively engaged in a good cause. And I like that because I know for me, I'm not the most patient person, and I feel like if I don't see results right away, that it must be because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. But I like that he reminds us that things take time. These are families, they're very diverse, and they are abstract sometimes, and they're just not super simple. And we need to always remember that, and remember everybody progresses at a different rate, and sometimes our first efforts to fix a problem are not going to work the way we want. But I think we should always, like he says, be patient and always be active in a good cause. And this is my Learning Interaction 3, and I will see you guys next time.